Oh, sorry. You ever try to sit through 2001 and then try and play AVP? Because the combination of the two will no doubt put you to sleep. Now, I never actually owned AVP back in the 90s. I just rented it a couple of times. But I can tell you this. Back in the 90s, I loved this game. This was one of my favorite games. In fact, it was even a motivating incident for me to go out and buy another Super Nintendo after mine mysteriously disappeared. You know what's bad, though? This game is actually not that good. It has aged poorly. So with my sob story about my Nintendo disappearing, let's try and get this review over with as fast as possible.
Now, the whole reason I bought this game and later started my whole entire SNES hunt was because of this one cutscene here. This thing here is just outstanding, and has really been firmly lodged in my collective consciousness for over 10 years. I mean, look at it. It's like the good AVP film that never was. Now, make no mistake, this cutscene here is nowhere near as good as the various cutscenes from AVP the arcade game, but this one, and the ones throughout the game, are still pretty damn good in their own right. Now, upon further research, this game is more likely the first AVP game ever made, rather than the arcade game, as this game was released in '93, whereas the arcade game was released in '94. Unlike in the arcade game, you control only one character, a Predator, which I guess was a fairly good move, as it does help differentiate this game from the multitudes of other beat-em-ups.
Now, there are some specific elements that a beat-em-up must have in order for it to be entertaining. 1. The player character must have a large number of attacks. If all you do in a game is press punch, and that's all you do throughout it, it gets boring really fast. Second, gameplay must be fast and fluid. If you move like you're a bloody 6-day-old carcass and just sort of stagger in the direction of the enemy, that gets boring really fast. The AI also must be at least fairly intelligent. If all it does is walk directly into your attacks, guess what? It gets pretty boring really fast. And finally, there has to be a driving soundtrack.
AVP lacks every single one of these sans one. The music is good, but not great. It does its job, and it's driving enough to keep you from falling asleep. Really, where to begin with this game? The first problem is there are very few attacks. You have a jump kick that feels very slow. Predators are supposed to be fast and agile. This guy here feels like he's the 2,000-year-old man.
Let them all go to hell, except Cave 70.
You then have your basic punch, that if you hit the same enemy 3 times, will turn into a moderately stronger punch. You then have an uppercut that will throw the enemy a small distance, but it won't do that much damage. And finally, you have a slide move that feels very slow. And just looking at it, it feels like it's very painful on the part of the Predator. He's just grinding across there like he's some kind of a slug. What characterizes this game perfectly is sloth. Everything just takes so bloody long. Each enemy takes a considerable amount of damage before it dies. I mean, look at this. Even the plasma caster is slow. It takes a while to charge up, and then it doesn't do any damage. I don't even know why they bothered including it. It is barely any more effective than the bloody punch attack. But it actually gets even dumber with the plasma caster, as you can charge up the little energy bar, and then you can call down a barrage from the Predator spaceship. That will harm everything, including you.
I think that Predator just won the bloody Darwin Award. I mean, really, how stupid do you have to be to call in an artillery strike on top of your bloody position to fight your enemies? I can tell you how dumb you have to be. You have to be as dumb as Shatner in Star Trek V, as he did the exact same thing. See, he was on some planet in the center of the galaxy, somehow, that had an energy being. And he wanted to take it out by having the Enterprise fire a photon torpedo, which is more advanced and more powerful than a nuke, right on top of his position. Now, since it was in Star Trek V, the torpedo blew him about, 6 feet. Why didn't I show a clip of that? Because I sat through Star Trek V once, and I will never sit through it again.
And really, this is just the game. This is all you do. You just drudge through levels, killing the same bad guys over and over again. What's worse is that this game uses that thrice damned life/continue system, which means you can play all the way through this game, die at the final boss, and have to play the entire game over again, which actually is what happened to me. And I can tell you this, the reason I'm not showing different levels throughout the game is I already put in my time. I already played through the game. I'm not doing it again. It was hard just getting this bit of footage, because everything takes so long. This game here is a very good example of a very aged SNES game. Now, there are a lot of older games that are timeless, that even in this era of HD graphics can still hold up, because at the end of it all, graphics don't make the gameplay makes the game, and the gameplay here is very poor. AVP the arcade game is vastly superior, and was so at the time when this game came out. But here's the thing, it was an arcade game. And getting to an arcade is a lot more difficult than you would imagine. It also costs quite a bit, because you gotta keep shoving in the quarters. With this, you just put in the game and start playing. Really, for me, I didn't even get to the arcade once a week. It was usually every other week. And really, the only arcade that I had access to never even had the Alien vs. Predator cabinet. Really, back in the 90s, I probably played AVP the arcade game maybe 10 times. It was that good that I was able to remember it and still thought it was great, but really, I played this game a whole lot more. Really, the whole reason why this game seemed good in the 90s is because it was all we had. You just couldn't get to the arcade that often, and if you could, there was always the likely chance that they just didn't have the game. So for me, this was the only place you could really get your AVP fix. But now, with the advent of MAME, this game is just obsolete.
Now, if you're a huge AVP fan, you may consider downloading AVP on the SNES. There's no real reason to try and hunt down the cartridge, as you're not going to play it. You're just going to stick it with the rest of your SNES games, and it will sit there collecting dust. But then again, at least it will get some use as a bloody paperweight. Now, for next time, we're going to take a look at a game that is in every way this game's opposite. For next time, we're going to take a look at AVP2 on the PC. But for now, this is General Lotz wishing you good Batman Returns, good Batman and Robin, or whatever makes you happy.